The silver tray slipped from Seynabou Diop's trembling hands the moment she heard the words through the half-open study door. "By Friday night, everyone will believe my wife died of heart failure." Her blood froze. Inside stood one of Africa's most admired billionaire couples. Outside stood a poor maid, whose voice carried no power at all. If Seynabou spoke, she could lose her job or her life. If she remained silent, an innocent woman named Aïssatou Ndiaye would never see another sunrise. As footsteps moved toward the door, Seynabou realized someone might already know she had uncovered a secret worth killing for. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what your local time is. Share it in the comments below, and if you enjoy powerful stories about courage, justice, and hope, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next journey together. Long before Seynabou Diop entered the gates of the Ndiaye estate, she had already learned that survival often demanded more strength than anyone could see. She had been born in a small village outside Saint Louis, Senegal, where the mornings began with roosters sweeping brooms and the smell of millet porridge drifting from open kitchens. Her father, Ousmane Diop, had been a fisherman. He was not a wealthy man, but he had been dependable, gentle and proud of his eldest daughter. He used to tell Seynabou that dignity was something no person could give her, and no person had the right to take away. When he died after a sudden illness, those words became the only inheritance he left behind. Seynabou was 28 then. Her mother, Mariama, had weak lungs and could no longer work for long hours in the market. Her younger brother, Ibrahima, was preparing for secondary school examinations, while her sister, Kadi, dreamed of becoming a nurse. Dreams, however, required money. Medicine required money. Food required money. And grief did not stop bills from arriving. At first, Seynabou sold vegetables beside her mother. Later, she cleaned guest houses in Dakar and washed clothes for families who rarely looked at her face. Every month, she sent almost everything she earned back home. Still, it was not enough. When a recruitment agent announced that wealthy families in Nairobi were hiring experienced domestic workers, Seynabou hesitated. Kenya was far from Senegal. She had never flown on an airplane, never lived outside her country, and knew no one in East Africa. But fear could not feed her family. 3 months later, she stood outside a vast cream-colored mansion in one of Nairobi's most exclusive neighborhoods, holding one small suitcase and a folded photograph of her mother and siblings. The Ndiaye estate was unlike anything she had ever seen. High iron gates guarded a long driveway lined with flowering jacaranda trees. The main house rose behind manicured lawns, broad balconies, and tall glass windows that reflected the afternoon sun. Security cameras watched every entrance. Uniformed guards stood near the gates, and expensive cars rested beneath a shaded parking area. Seynabou felt painfully aware of her worn shoes. A middle-aged woman named Fatou Sow met her at the servants' entrance. Fatou had worked in the house for nearly 15 years. She was originally from Dakar and spoke Wolof, which immediately eased Seynabou's fear. "You will work hard here," Fatou told her as they walked through a spotless corridor. But Madame Aïssatou is not cruel. She remembers that workers are human beings, and her husband Seynabou asked. Fatou paused for only a second. "Mr. Mamadou likes order." The answer sounded simple, yet something in Fatou's voice made Seynabou remember it. Aïssatou Ndiaye met her that evening. She was taller than Seynabou expected, with calm eyes, elegant posture, and a quiet authority that made the room feel still when she entered. She wore a dark green business dress and carried no visible jewelry except a small gold bracelet. To most of the world, Aïssatou was one of Africa's most successful businesswomen. She had built Ndiaye Health Group from a single medical supply company into a network of clinics, laboratories, and pharmaceutical distribution centers across several countries. Newspapers praised her intelligence. Universities invited her to speak. Charities displayed her photograph beside smiling children and newly opened hospitals. Yet, when she greeted Seynabou, there was no arrogance in her voice. "Fatou tells me your family is in Senegal," Aissatou said. "Yes, madam. You may call them when your duties are finished. No one here should be prevented from speaking to family." Seynabou lowered her eyes, surprised by the kindness. "Thank you, madam." Aissatou smiled faintly. "Work honestly, and you will be treated honestly." Those words stayed with Seynabou. Mamadou Ndiaye appeared moments later. He was handsome in the polished way of men who were accustomed to being photographed. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, even though he had already returned home from work. His voice was smooth, his smile controlled, and his presence filled the room differently from his wife's. "So, this is our new maid," he said. "Yes, sir," Seynabou replied. Mamadou studied her for a little too long. "Fatou makes sure she understands the rules. Certain rooms are private. Certain documents are not to be touched. We value trust in this house." His words were polite, but they did not feel welcoming. Seynabou nodded. "I understand, sir." The following weeks passed in a strict rhythm. She woke before sunrise, helped prepare breakfast, cleaned the bedrooms, polished wooden floors, washed linens, and assisted Fatou with household supplies. The work was demanding, but the pay was better than anything she had earned in Dakar. Every Sunday evening she called her mother. Mariama always tried to sound stronger than she was. "Do not worry about us," she would say between quiet coughs. "Take care of yourself." Seynabou knew those words were a mother's attempt to hide suffering. She sent money for medicine school fees and repairs to the leaking roof of their family home. For the first time since her father's death, there was enough food in the kitchen every week. That knowledge carried her through exhaustion. Life inside the mansion appeared perfect from the outside. Aissatou hosted business leaders, government officials, doctors, and charity organizers. Mamadou stood beside her at public events, placing a hand gently on her back whenever cameras were present. He praised her achievements and spoke proudly of their marriage. Guests often described them as a symbol of African success, but servants saw what guests did not. Seynabou noticed that Mamadou's smile disappeared the moment the doors closed. He questioned Aissatou about every phone call. He demanded to know why meetings lasted longer than expected. He opened her mail before she saw it and often answered questions directed at her. At dinner, Aissatou sometimes began speaking about a business decision only for Mamadou to interrupt. "You are tired," he would say. "I will handle it." Aissatou rarely argued. She would simply lower her gaze and continue eating. One evening, Seynabou entered the dining room to clear the plates and found Aissatou sitting alone. The billionaire woman looked pale. Her untouched food had gone cold. "Madame, are you unwell?" Seynabou asked gently. Aissatou looked up as though startled to realize someone was there. "It is only stress. Should I call Fatou Namia?" Aissatou pressed 2 fingers against her temple. "My husband says I work too much. Perhaps he is right." Before Seynabou could respond, Mamadou entered. His eyes moved from his wife to the maid. "What is happening?" "Nothing," Sir Seynabou said. Mamadou walked to Aissatou and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You forgot your medication again," he said softly. "I did not forget. You must have." His voice remained gentle, but his fingers tightened slightly against her shoulder. Aissatou said nothing. Mamadou turned toward Seynabou. "You may leave." She obeyed, but unease followed her into the corridor. Later that night, she asked Fatou whether Aissatou had been ill for long. Fatou kept folding towels. "Madame has been tired. What kind of medication does she take?" Fatou's hands stopped. "That is not our concern." Seynabou looked at her. I only asked because she seemed frightened. Fatou raised her eyes then, and Seynabou saw something unexpected in them. Not confusion, fear. Listen to me, Fatou whispered. In a house this large, survival depends on knowing when not to ask questions. Before Seynabou could reply, footsteps echoed from the upper floor. Both women fell silent. A moment later, Mamadou appeared at the end of the corridor. He did not speak. He simply looked at them. Then his gaze settled on Seynabou. For the first time since arriving in Nairobi, she felt certain that the beauty of the NDIA mansion was hiding something cold, controlled and deeply wrong. And somehow, she had already stepped too close to it. The following morning, the mansion awoke as it always did, with polished floors, fresh flowers, and the quiet efficiency expected inside one of Nairobi's most prestigious homes. To an outsider, everything looked flawless. Gardeners trimmed hedges with perfect precision. Security guards exchanged polite greetings. Luxury vehicles rolled through the front gate according to a carefully managed schedule. Only Seynabou could no longer see perfection. Ever since Fatou's warning, every smile felt rehearsed, every silence carried weight, and every closed door seemed to hide a conversation she was never meant to hear. She tried convincing herself she was imagining things. After all, she had only been employed for a few weeks. Perhaps wealthy families simply lived differently. Perhaps successful people carried pressures ordinary workers could never understand. Yet, the uneasy feeling refused to disappear. That afternoon, while dusting the upstairs library, Seynabou noticed Mamadou walking briskly down the hallway with two men she had never seen before. Neither wore business suits. Instead, they dressed casually in expensive linen shirts, sunglasses, and polished leather shoes. Their expressions remained serious as they followed Mamadou into his private office at the end of the corridor. The office door closed immediately. Almost instinctively, Seynabou glanced at the hallway clock. 3 o'clock. She remembered because Aissatou had told everyone she would spend the afternoon visiting one of her children's hospitals outside Nairobi. That meant Mamadou had deliberately arranged the meeting while his wife was away. When Fatou entered the library moments later, Seynabou spoke quietly. "Do visitors often come while Madame is gone?" Fatou barely looked toward the hallway. "Finish your work." "I only wondered." "Seynabou." Fatou's voice became unusually firm. "Not every question deserves an answer." The older woman's reaction only deepened Seynabou's curiosity. Later that evening, the household gathered in the kitchen after dinner had been served upstairs. The cooks laughed while preparing desserts for the next day's luncheon. One gardener joked about his football team losing another match. Everyone talked except Fatou. She washed dishes in complete silence. Seynabou approached her carefully. "You've worked here 15 years. Fatou nodded without looking up. "Has Madame always seemed lonely?" The older woman finally stopped washing. For several seconds, she simply stared into the sink. "When I first came here," she said softly, "Madame laughed often." "What changed?" "I don't know." It was a lie. Seynabou could hear it. Not because Fatou sounded dishonest, but because she sounded afraid. Before another word could be spoken, the kitchen door opened. Mamadou entered unexpectedly. Every conversation stopped instantly. He smiled warmly. "I hope everyone is being treated well." "Yes, sir," several voices answered together. His eyes slowly moved across the room until they settled on Seynabou. "You've adjusted nicely." "I'm grateful for the opportunity, sir." "Good," he continued smiling. "A loyal household depends on trustworthy people." The sentence sounded harmless. Yet, for reasons Seynabou couldn't explain, it felt less like encouragement and more like a warning. The next several days revealed patterns she had never noticed before. Every Tuesday evening, confidential files disappeared from Aissatou's study and reappeared the following morning inside Mamadou's office. Every Thursday, a black SUV arrived after dark. Its passengers never entered through the front entrance. Instead, security escorted them directly through a side entrance leading toward Mamadou's private wing. The meetings usually lasted less than an hour. Whenever they ended, Mamadou appeared unusually pleased. Meanwhile, Aissatou seemed increasingly exhausted. She forgot appointments. She occasionally struggled to remember conversations from earlier in the week. More than once, Seynabou noticed her rubbing her temples, as though fighting constant headaches. One afternoon, while arranging fresh flowers inside the sitting room, Seynabou overheard part of a conversation between the billionaire couple. "You've been taking too much on yourself," Mamadou said gently. "I've managed this company for 20 years. I know. I've never had these memory problems before. You simply need rest. I don't feel like myself anymore." Mamadou walked closer. His voice remained calm. "The doctor adjusted your medication. Give it time." Seynabou quietly left before they noticed her. Something about the conversation stayed with her all evening. Later, while collecting empty water glasses from Aissatou's bedroom, she noticed several prescription bottles arranged neatly on a bedside table. Each carried different labels, different dosages, different dates. She was not trying to invade anyone's privacy. She merely wanted to place the glasses beside the tray. But one detail caught her attention. Several bottles appeared almost full. Others were nearly empty, despite having been filled only recently. It made little sense. Footsteps approached. Seynabou quickly stepped away, just as Mamadou entered, carrying another small packet from a pharmacy. He looked surprised to see her. "Cleaning?" "Yes, sir." His smile returned immediately. "My wife sometimes forgets her medicine." He placed the packet inside a locked drawer instead of the bedside cabinet. "I manage everything for her now." "Of course, sir. You may leave." As Seynabou walked into the hallway, one question refused to disappear. If the medicine was for Aissatou, why lock it away where only Mamadou had access? 2 days later, another incident unsettled her even more. She was changing linens in one of the upstairs guest rooms when voices drifted through the connecting ventilation duct. The sound came from Mamadou's office. Normally, she would have ignored it, but one sentence froze her in place. "The board meeting must happen before she changes her mind." Another unfamiliar male voice answered. "Will she sign? She doesn't have much choice anymore." What if someone advises her otherwise? There was a short silence. Then Mamadou laughed softly. "No one will." The conversation shifted too far from the vent to hear clearly. Seynabou stood motionless. Board meeting. Sign what? She knew almost nothing about corporate business, yet the confidence in Mamadou's voice disturbed her. He sounded less like a husband discussing family matters, and more like someone executing a carefully prepared strategy. That evening, she found Aissatou alone on the back terrace overlooking the gardens. The billionaire woman watched the sunset without speaking. For a long moment, neither woman broke the silence. Finally, Aissatou smiled faintly. "The jacaranda trees remind me of Senegal. You miss home. Every day." Seynabou hesitated. "May I ask you something, madame?" "You may." "Do you trust everyone around you?" The question surprised even Seynabou herself. Aissatou looked toward the distant gardens. "I used to think I did." "You don't sound certain." "I've learned that success attracts many kinds of people." "What kind?" "Some celebrate your victories. And others, they celebrate only what they can take from you." Before Seynabou could ask another question, Mamadou's voice echoed from inside the house. "Aissatou." His tone was pleasant. "Dinner is ready." Aissatou rose slowly. As she passed Seynabou, she spoke almost absent-mindedly. "Sometimes I wish life were as simple as when I was young." Then she disappeared inside. Seynabou remained alone beneath the fading evening sky. For the first time since arriving in Nairobi, she felt something she could no longer dismiss as imagination. Someone inside this beautiful mansion was hiding dangerous secrets. She simply didn't yet know how dangerous they truly were. The answer came the following afternoon. While carrying freshly ironed shirts toward the upstairs hallway, Seynabou heard raised voices coming from behind the closed door of Mamadou's private office. Unlike every previous conversation, this one was no longer calm. A man's voice struck the desk with anger. "We've waited long enough," another answered sharply. "Lower your voice." Then came Mamadou's unmistakable reply, cold-controlled and utterly unlike the charming husband the world admired. "I said the plan stays exactly as arranged. No mistakes, no delays." Seynabou instinctively stopped walking. Her heart began pounding. She had no idea what plan they were discussing, but every instinct told her she was about to hear something she was never meant to know. She took one cautious step closer to the office door. Seynabou's heartbeat echoed louder than the voices behind the office door. She should have walked away. Every instinct told her to leave the hallway, immediately finish delivering the freshly ironed shirts, and pretend she had heard nothing. That was what every servant learned sooner or later. The less you knew, the longer you survived. Yet her feet refused to move. The argument inside had become too intense to ignore. "We cannot postpone it again," one unfamiliar man insisted. "The shareholders are already asking questions." Mamadou answered in the calm, measured tone that had made him one of the continent's most respected businessmen. "They will stop asking questions after next week." "And Madame Aissatou." A brief silence followed. Then Mamadou spoke words that turned Seynabou's blood to ice. "After Friday, Aissatou will no longer be anyone's concern." For a moment, Seynabou wondered if she had misunderstood. Perhaps he meant Aissatou would retire. Perhaps she planned to step down from the company. She leaned slightly closer. Another voice, lower and more cautious, broke the silence. "The dosage worries me." "It shouldn't," Mamadou replied. "Dr. Cheek Fei calculated everything himself." "What if the autopsy finds something unusual?" "There won't be an autopsy." Someone chuckled quietly. "The medical history already explains everything." Seynabou gripped the stack of shirts so tightly that her fingers hurt. Medical history, dosage, autopsy. Her mind raced through the conversation she had overheard days earlier about Aissatou's medication. The headaches, the memory loss, the pills locked inside Mamadou's drawer. Suddenly, scattered pieces began fitting together in a way that terrified her. Inside the office, papers rustled. A chair scraped across the polished floor. Then Mamadou spoke again. "The public already believes she's exhausted." "Exactly." "The board believes her health is declining." "Correct." "The doctor has documented heart complications." "Everything is ready." Another man lowered his voice. "So, on Friday." Mamadou finished the sentence without hesitation. "She collapses after dinner." No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, another man asked quietly, "And the inheritance?" "The will transfers every controlling share to me." "The company?" "I become executive chairman immediately." "The foundation?" "I'll restructure it after the funeral." Someone laughed. Not loudly, just enough to make Seynabou feel sick. They were discussing Aissatou's death as though they were planning a business meeting. No grief, no hesitation, only numbers, power, ownership. Seynabou's breathing became shallow. She had entered the mansion believing wealthy people worried about contracts, investments, and international conferences. She had never imagined hearing powerful men calmly organizing the murder of a woman admired across Africa for building hospitals and helping children. Then another sentence shattered any remaining doubt. "What about the maid?" one man asked. Seynabou froze. "The new one," Mamadou replied. "Yes. She notices things." Mamadou remained silent for a few seconds before answering. "She's harmless." "You said the same about the accountant." "This is different." "What if she talks?" Another pause. Then Mamadou's voice became colder than before. "If she becomes a problem." He never finished the sentence. He didn't need to. Every man inside the office understood exactly what he meant. So did Seynabou. A bead of sweat rolled down her neck despite the cool air conditioning. She slowly stepped backward. One careful step. Then another. She needed to leave. Immediately. She turned toward the staircase. At that exact moment, one shirt slipped from the pile in her arms. It floated silently onto the polished floor. The sound was barely noticeable. But inside the office, the conversation stopped. Completely. Seynabou's heart nearly stopped with it. A chair moved. Footsteps approached. Someone spoke sharply. "Did you hear that?" Another voice answered. "Outside." The office doorknob rattled. Without thinking, Seynabou grabbed the fallen shirt, hurried toward the nearby laundry closet, and slipped inside just as the office door opened. She left the closet door slightly ajar. Through the narrow gap, she could see part of the hallway. Mamadou stepped outside first. His face carried none of the warmth he displayed before cameras. His eyes slowly examined every corner of the corridor. Behind him stood 3 men. One was Dr. Chik Fei. Seynabou recognized him immediately from photographs hanging in the entrance hall beside Aissatou during hospital charity events. The second man wore an expensive gray suit and carried a leather briefcase. The third had broad shoulders and the alert posture of someone accustomed to security work. None of them smiled. Mamadou looked down the hallway. Someone was here. The security-looking man glanced toward the staircase. "I'll check downstairs." "No." Mamadou raised one hand. "Not yet." He slowly walked several steps farther down the corridor. Seynabou held her breath. If he looked inside the laundry closet, everything would be over. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. She silently prayed. "Please, please don't open this door." Mamadou stopped less than 3 meters away. His eyes rested on the cleaning cart Seynabou had left beside the wall. Fresh towels, none, cleaning supplies, an empty spray bottle. He frowned. "Whose cart is this?" No one answered. The security man spoke first. "The new maid was cleaning this floor earlier." "The Senegalese girl?" "Yes." Mamadou remained thoughtful. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he smiled. Not kindly. Patiently, like a hunter studying fresh footprints. "Find her." Seynabou felt her stomach twist. The men separated immediately. One headed downstairs, another toward the guest rooms. Dr. Fei returned inside the office. Mamadou remained alone in the hallway. He reached for the cleaning cart, slowly, casually. He picked up Seynabou's folded work schedule resting on top. Her name was written clearly across the front. Seynabou Diop. He read it once, then folded the paper neatly and placed it back. "So," he murmured to himself, "Seynabou." There was something chilling about the way he pronounced her name. Not with anger, with curiosity, as though deciding whether she deserved attention or elimination. Finally, he walked away. Only after hearing the office door close again did Seynabou allow herself to breathe. Her knees nearly gave way. She remained hidden for several minutes, unable to think clearly. Everything had changed. She now knew 3 undeniable truths. First, Aissatou was not imagining her declining health. Someone was deliberately manipulating her medication. Second, Friday's dinner was meant to end with Aissatou's death, not by accident, not by illness, by murder disguised as natural causes. Third, if Mamadou discovered that Seynabou had overheard the meeting, she would almost certainly disappear before Friday ever arrived. The realization hit her with crushing force. She was only a maid, no wealth, no influence, no powerful relatives. If she went to the police with nothing except overheard conversations, who would believe her over one of Africa's most celebrated businessmen? If she accused Mamadou publicly without evidence, he could destroy her reputation with a single press conference. Worse, he might ensure she never had another chance to speak. Seynabou quietly left the laundry closet after confirming the hallway was empty. She forced herself to continue working as though nothing had happened. She swept corridors, folded linens, served afternoon tea. Every movement felt mechanical. Inside, her mind raced endlessly. Should she run? Should she warn Aissatou immediately? Should she contact the police? Every option seemed impossible. Late that evening, while placing fresh towels outside Aissatou's bedroom, Seynabou noticed something that made her stop once more. Mamadou stood inside the room smiling warmly as he handed his wife a glass of water and her evening medication. Aissatou smiled back with complete trust. Without hesitation, she swallowed the pills. Mamadou gently kissed her forehead. "Get some rest," he said softly. "You've been working too hard." Anyone watching would have seen the picture of a devoted husband caring for the woman he loved. Only Seynabou knew the horrifying truth hidden behind that affectionate smile. She lowered her eyes and quietly walked away before either of them noticed her. As she disappeared down the hallway, one thought repeated over and over in her mind. She had only 4 days left to save Aissatou and Ndiaye, and she had absolutely no idea how. Seynabou barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mamadou's calm expression as he described his wife's death as if it were another item on a business agenda. She heard the word Friday echoing in her mind until dawn painted the Nairobi sky a pale gold. She rose before the other servants washed her face with cold water and stared at her reflection in the small mirror hanging above her narrow bed. "You cannot stay silent," she whispered to herself. "But how do you make someone believe the unbelievable?" The answer never came. After breakfast had been served, Fatou found Seynabou polishing the marble staircase. "You look ill," the older woman observed quietly. "I didn't sleep." Fatou studied her face for a long moment. "What happened?" Seynabou glanced toward the hallway to make sure no one was nearby. "I need to tell you something." Fatou immediately shook her head. "Not here." 10 minutes later, the two women met in the laundry room, where the constant noise of washing machines made it difficult for anyone outside to overhear their conversation. Seynabou lowered her voice. "I heard them." Fatou frowned. "Heard who?" "Mr. Mamadou." The older woman's face instantly lost its color. "What did you hear?" Seynabou hesitated only briefly before recounting everything: the secret meeting, the discussion about medication, the inheritance, the carefully planned death, and the mention of Friday. She expected disbelief. Instead, Fatou closed her eyes. For several seconds she said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "I prayed I was wrong." "You suspected something." Fatou slowly nodded. "I have watched Madame become weaker for almost a year." "But why didn't you tell her?" "Tell her what?" Fatou looked at Seynabou with heartbreaking sadness. "That I had no proof, that her husband frightened me, that I felt something was wrong but couldn't explain why." Tears filled her eyes. She trusted him more than anyone. Seynabou reached for her hand. We have to warn her. Fatou quickly pulled away. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, Seynabou replied, struggling to remain calm. If we do nothing, she will die. Fatou lowered her voice even further. 3 years ago, the former chauffeur disappeared after accusing one of Mr. Mamadou's business partners of fraud. What happened to him? No one knows. And the accountant, the one who questioned missing company funds, resigned suddenly. Did he really resign? Fatou's silence answered the question. Fear settled heavily between them. Finally, Seynabou spoke. I cannot pretend I heard nothing. Fatou looked toward the closed laundry room door. Then be careful. That afternoon, fate gave Seynabou an unexpected opportunity. Aissatou was sitting alone in the mansion's sunroom, reviewing documents while sipping herbal tea. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, illuminating shelves filled with books, African sculptures, and family photographs. For the first time in days, Mamadou was away attending an investor's luncheon. Seynabou knew this might be her only chance. She carried a tray of fresh tea inside. Madame, Aissatou smiled wearily. Thank you, Seynabou. As she turned to leave, Seynabou stopped. Madam, may I speak with you privately? Aissatou looked surprised. Of course. Seynabou took a deep breath. What I'm about to say may sound impossible. The billionaire woman set her papers aside. You seem frightened. I am. What happened? Seynabou's hands trembled. I believe someone wants to hurt you. Aissatou's expression changed from curiosity to confusion. What do you mean? I overheard a conversation. Whose conversation? Seynabou swallowed. Mr. Mamadou's. Silence filled the room. Aissatou stared at her. Then she smiled gently. You must have misunderstood. I didn't. My husband would never. They talked about your medicine. Aissatou's smile disappeared. They mentioned Friday. Still, she remained composed. Seynabou, they discussed your inheritance. They probably discussed legal matters. They talked about an autopsy. They oversee hospitals. They talked about your death. The words finally hung between them. For several seconds, neither woman moved. Aissatou slowly stood. I know this is difficult for you. I'm telling the truth. I believe you think you are. No. Seynabou, I heard everything. Aissatou walked toward the window overlooking the gardens. When she spoke again, her voice carried sadness rather than anger. My husband has cared for me for many years. I know. He manages my medication because my schedule became overwhelming. I know. He has sacrificed his own career to support mine. Seynabou wanted to interrupt, but forced herself to remain silent. Finally, Aissatou turned around. I appreciate your concern. I'm begging you. I truly do. Please don't take any medication from him until we know. Seynabou. Her tone remained kind but firm. That is enough. The young maid felt her heart sink. I would never forgive myself if something happened to you. And I would never forgive myself if I believed an accusation against my husband without evidence. There it was. The word Seynabou had feared most. Evidence. She had none. Only memories of conversations no one else had heard. Aissatou stepped closer. You are a good woman. I'm trying to save your life. I know you believe that. She gently touched Seynabou's shoulder. But stress and misunderstanding can create frightening conclusions. Seynabou realized she had failed. Before she could speak again, footsteps echoed outside the room. Mamadou had returned earlier than expected. He entered carrying his briefcase and immediately sensed the unusual atmosphere. Am I interrupting something? Aissatou smiled politely. No. Mamadou looked from his wife to Seynabou. What were you discussing? For a fraction of a second, Seynabou considered lying. Instead, she answered honestly. I was concerned about Madame's health. That's thoughtful. His smile remained perfect. What specifically concerned you? Aissatou spoke before Seynabou could answer. Our new maid worries that I'm working too hard. Mamadou laughed softly. She's right. He turned towards Seynabou. You care about Madame. Yes, sir. So do I. His eyes met hers. For only an instant the warmth disappeared. She saw the same cold calculation she had witnessed outside the office. Then it vanished again. Thank you, he said pleasantly. You may return to your duties. Seynabou bowed and left. As soon as she disappeared into the hallway, she slowed her pace. The sunroom door had not closed completely. Voices drifted through the narrow opening. What exactly did she say? Mamadou asked quietly. She believes someone intends to harm me. A pause. And she mentioned me. Yes. Another silence. Then Mamadou laughed. A vivid imagination. She's sincere. I'm sure she is. Should we dismiss her? No. His answer came too quickly. Why not? I'll handle it. That sentence chilled Seynabou far more than if he had shouted. She hurried away before hearing anything else. The remainder of the day passed under an invisible cloud. Whenever Seynabou entered a room, conversation stopped. Security guards watched her a little longer than before. One of the drivers who usually greeted her warmly avoided eye contact. Even junior household staff seemed unusually distant. Word had spread. She had challenged the master's trust. Late that evening, as Seynabou returned to her small room in the servants' quarters, she noticed an envelope resting on her neatly made bed. There was no name written on it, no seal, only a single folded sheet of paper inside. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. The message contained only one sentence. Leave this house before Friday. If you want to see your family alive again. Seynabou read the anonymous note 3 more times before her hands finally stopped shaking. Leave this house before Friday. If you want to see your family alive again. The handwriting was neat, almost elegant. There was no signature, no clue about who had written it. Only a message carefully chosen to strike the deepest fear inside her heart. Not herself, her family. She immediately reached for her phone and dialed her mother's number in Senegal. The call connected after several rings. Mama, Mariama's familiar voice answered with gentle warmth. Seynabou, I was just thinking about you. Relief washed over her. How are you? I'm fine, my daughter. Why do you sound out of breath, No reason. You've been crying. Seynabou quickly wiped her eyes. I'm only tired. Mariama laughed softly. You have never been able to hide your feelings from me. For a moment, Seynabou considered telling her everything. She imagined explaining the conspiracy, the threats, and the terrifying conversation she had overheard. But what would it accomplish? Her mother was thousands of kilometers away. The truth would only frighten her. Instead, Seynabou asked quietly, Has anyone strange visited the village? No. Any unfamiliar phone calls? Mariama sounded puzzled. No, why? Just promise me you'll stay close to home for a few days. My child, promise me. There was a brief silence. I promise. After ending the call, Seynabou stared at the anonymous note again. Either the writer truly knew where her family lived, or they wanted her to believe they did. Both possibilities were frightening. She folded the paper carefully and hid it inside the lining of her suitcase. If something happened to her, someone needed to find it. The following morning, she forced herself to behave normally. She greeted the cooks, swept the entrance hall, prepared fresh flowers for the guest rooms. Inside, however, Every sound made her flinch. Every unfamiliar face seemed dangerous. At breakfast, Mamadou appeared unusually cheerful. He complimented the chef. He joked with the security staff. He even thanked Seynabou for serving coffee. Anyone watching would have admired his kindness. Only Seynabou noticed that every few minutes his eyes quietly returned to her, not openly, briefly, as though measuring her reactions, as though waiting to see whether fear had already driven her away. She lowered her gaze each time. She could not allow him to suspect she had chosen to stay. Late that morning, Fatou found her arranging fresh towels in the linen room. "You received it." Seynabou looked up sharply. "The note." Fatou sighed. "I knew you would." "You knew?" "I've seen messages like that before." "Who writes them?" "I don't know." "You must." Fatou slowly closed the linen cabinet. When powerful people want silence, they rarely speak directly. "Has this happened to others?" The older woman hesitated. "Years ago, another employee asked too many questions." "What happened?" "He resigned." "Voluntarily." Fatou looked away. "That's what everyone believed." "And you?" "I never saw him again." Silence filled the room. Finally, Seynabou asked, "Why are you still here?" Fatou smiled sadly. "Because leaving isn't always as easy as people imagine." Before Seynabou could ask another question, someone knocked gently on the door. It was Bakari Diop, the company's senior accountant. Unlike most executives, Bakari often visited the mansion to deliver financial documents directly to Aissatou. He was a quiet man in his late 50s, respected for his honesty and meticulous work. Today, however, he looked distracted. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I'm looking for Madam." "She's in the West office," Fatou replied. Bakari thanked them and walked away. As he disappeared down the corridor, several folders slipped from his briefcase. Papers scattered across the polished floor. Seynabou hurried to help. "I'm sorry," Bakari said. "It was my fault." As they gathered the documents, one page briefly caught Seynabou's attention. Across the top were the words, "Emergency Transfer Authorization" below, that appeared several companies she did not recognize. Before she could read further, Bakari gently removed the document. "Thank you." His smile seemed genuine. Yet his eyes revealed concern, not fear, concern, almost as though he carried questions he could not answer. After he left, Seynabou whispered, "He seems troubled." Fatou nodded. "Mr. Bakari notices details." "So do I." "That may become dangerous." The warning lingered in Seynabou's mind throughout the afternoon. Later, while cleaning the upstairs guest corridor, she noticed Dr. Cheek Fei arriving unexpectedly. The physician carried a black medical case. Instead of entering through the main family lounge, Mamadou escorted him directly to Aissatou's private sitting room. The meeting lasted nearly 40 minutes. When Dr. Fei finally emerged, he looked unusually tense. As he passed the hallway, a folded prescription accidentally slipped from his folder. Neither man noticed. They continued downstairs discussing tomorrow's charity gala preparations. The paper rested on the carpet only a few meters away. Seynabou looked toward both ends of the hallway. Empty. She walked over and picked it up. The prescription bore Aissatou's full name. It authorized an increase in medication dosage beginning Friday morning. Her pulse quickened. She remembered the conversation inside Mamadou's office. "The dosage worries me." Dr. Cheek Fei calculated everything himself. Before she could study the document further, footsteps echoed nearby. She quickly folded the prescription beneath the towels in her cleaning basket. Moments later, Mamadou returned alone. He noticed her immediately. "Seynabou." "Yes, sir." "Did you see Dr. Fei leave?" "Yes." "He forgot a prescription." "I haven't seen it." For a brief second, Mamadou watched her carefully. Then he smiled. "If you find it, bring it directly to me." "Of course, sir." He walked away. Only after hearing his footsteps disappear downstairs did Seynabou breathe again. She had just lied to him for the first time. That evening inside her tiny room, she unfolded the prescription under the light of a bedside lamp. Several medical terms meant nothing to her. But one handwritten note stood out. "Administer only under husband's supervision." Another sentence had been crossed out so heavily it was difficult to read. Holding the paper near the lamp, Seynabou slowly made out part of the erased words. Patient reports, unusual dizziness after previous increase. Why had someone crossed it out? She photographed the prescription with her phone before carefully returning it to exactly the way she had found it. Then she hid the image inside a password-protected folder. It was not much, but it was the first tangible piece of evidence she possessed. The next morning brought another unexpected discovery. Bakari Diop arrived again, this time visibly distressed. While waiting outside Aïssatou's office, he quietly approached Seynabou. "You work closely with Madame." "I help around the house." He hesitated. "Has she seemed different lately?" "Yes." He lowered his voice. "I'm seeing financial authorizations carrying her signature." "So?" "I don't believe she signed them." Seynabou's heart skipped. "You think they're forged?" "I didn't say that." "But you suspect it." Bakari looked around to ensure they were alone. "I've worked with Madame for 18 years. And I know her signature." He stopped himself. "I shouldn't have said anything." Before Seynabou could respond, Mamadou appeared at the end of the corridor. Bakari immediately straightened. "Good morning." Mamadou smiled pleasantly. "Everything ready for tomorrow?" "Almost." "Excellent." His eyes shifted towards Seynabou. "Is everything all right here?" "Yes, sir," both answered almost simultaneously. Mamadou continued walking. Only after he disappeared did Bakari whisper, "Be careful." Those two words confirmed what Seynabou had begun to suspect. She was no longer the only person sensing that something was terribly wrong. Somewhere inside the mansion, others were quietly noticing the cracks beneath Mamadou's perfect image. And if they could connect those pieces before Friday arrived, perhaps Aïssatou still had a chance. But as Seynabou slipped the photographed prescription back into her hidden folder, she failed to notice the tiny red light blinking once inside the smoke detector above her bedroom door. Someone was already watching her room. Someone knew she was searching for answers. The red light blinked once, then again. Seynabou froze. At first, she thought she was imagining it just a reflection, a trick of tired eyes after too many sleepless nights. But when she lifted her gaze slowly toward the ceiling, her breath caught in her throat. The smoke detector. A tiny, almost invisible red dot flickered behind its plastic cover. Watching. Recording. Her heart began to pound so loudly she feared it might give her away, even though she was alone in her room. Instinctively, she stepped backward, as though distance alone could protect her. They know. The thought came without hesitation. Someone had been monitoring her. Not just her movements in the house. Not just her conversations. Her private space, her only refuge, was no longer safe. She forced herself to remain calm. Panic would only make mistakes more likely. Slowly, she reached for her phone and turned it off. Then she placed it face down on the small table beside her bed. If someone was watching, they needed to believe she suspected nothing. She sat down, folded her hands in her lap, and stared at the floor. Think. If the camera had been there before, then everything she had done in that room, including photographing the prescription, might already be known. Which meant Mamadou was no longer just suspicious. He was certain. And if he was certain, then Seynabou had just become a threat that needed to be removed. A cold wave of realization passed through her body. The note, the warning, the subtle shifts in how people treated her. This was no longer about intimidation. This was preparation. She needed to act faster. That night, she did not sleep in her room. Instead, she quietly moved her blanket to the laundry area and pretended she had fallen asleep while waiting for a cycle to finish. The noise of the machines masked her movements, and no cameras seemed to be installed there, or, at least, none that she could see. At dawn, she returned briefly to her room, careful not to reveal her awareness of the surveillance. She changed clothes, picked up her cleaning supplies, and began the day as usual. But everything had changed. Every step she took inside the mansion now felt like walking through a trap. Late that morning, an incident occurred that confirmed her fears. She was polishing the glass table in the main lounge when one of the junior security guards approached her. He was new, young, nervous, and not yet fully trained to hide his emotions. "Seynabou," he said quietly. "Yes. Mr. Mamadou wants to see you." Her hands stilled. "Now." "Yes." The guard hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "Be careful." That was all. He walked away immediately, leaving her alone with the growing weight in her chest. This was it. She wiped her hands, slowly placed the cleaning cloth aside, and made her way toward Mamadou's office. The hallway felt longer than usual. Each step echoed louder than it should have. When she reached the door, she paused briefly, then knocked. "Come in." His voice was calm. Too calm. She opened the door and stepped inside. Mamadou sat behind his desk, reviewing documents. The room smelled faintly of expensive cologne and polished wood. He did not look up immediately. "Close the door." She obeyed. Only then did he raise his eyes to meet hers. For several seconds he said nothing. He simply studied her. The silence stretched. Then finally, "How long have you been working here, Seynabou?" 2 months, sir." "And you find the work satisfactory?" "Yes, sir." "And the staff treats you well?" "Yes." He leaned back slightly. "Good." Another pause. "You've been asking questions." Her pulse quickened. "I only asked about Madame's health." He tapped his fingers lightly against the desk. "You're from Senegal?" "Yes." "St. Louis, correct?" Seynabou's stomach tightened. "Yes." "Your mother is Mariama Diop." Her throat went dry. "Yes." "She lives alone with your 2 younger siblings." Seynabou forced herself to remain still. "Yes, sir." Mamadou smiled. "You are a devoted daughter." "I try to be." "I admire that." He stood slowly and walked around the desk. Each step was deliberate, controlled. He stopped just a few feet away from her. "Tell me something, Seynabou." "Yes, sir." "If someone were to put your family in danger, what would you do?" The question struck like a physical blow. "I would protect them." "Of course you would." He nodded thoughtfully. "Anyone would." His voice remained gentle, "Which is why I believe you understand the importance of loyalty." Seynabou said nothing. Mamadou continued. "This house runs on trust." "Yes, sir." "When that trust is broken, consequences follow." He moved closer, close enough for her to smell his cologne clearly. "You've heard things you shouldn't have." The words were not a question. They were a statement. Her heart pounded. "I don't understand." "Don't lie." His voice hardened for the first time. The shift was immediate, sharp, dangerous. Seynabou lowered her gaze. Silence stretched between them. Then Mamadou exhaled slowly and stepped back as though regaining control. "I'm a reasonable man," he said. "I believe in second chances." Hope flickered briefly inside her. I don't want trouble, she said quietly. Good. He returned to his desk and opened a drawer. From it, he removed an envelope. He placed it on the desk and slid it toward her. Take this. She hesitated. Open it. Inside were several neatly stacked bundles of cash, more money than she had ever seen in her life. This is enough to take care of your family for a long time, Mamadou said calmly. More will follow. Seynabou stared at the money. You want me to leave? Immediately. And say nothing. Exactly. He folded his hands. You return to Senegal. You build a better life. Everyone wins. And Madam, Mamadou's expression did not change. My wife will be taken care of. Seynabou slowly closed the envelope. Her hands trembled slightly. You expect me to accept this? I expect you to be smart. Silence filled the room. Finally, she spoke. What if I refuse? For the first time, Mamadou's smile disappeared completely. Then you will make a very serious mistake. He leaned forward slightly. You've already received a warning. Seynabou felt her chest tighten. You know what happens next. The threat hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. She understood now. This was not a negotiation. It was a final chance. Take the money, disappear, or become another problem that needed to be erased. Seynabou lifted her head slowly. Her voice when she spoke was quiet but steady. I can't. Mamadou stared at her. You can't. I won't. A long silence followed. Then he laughed, not loudly, not angrily, almost impressed. Interesting. He picked up the envelope and returned it to the drawer. I underestimated you. He walked back around the desk and sat down again. That was my mistake. He looked at her with new eyes now, no longer dismissive, no longer curious. Now he saw her clearly, as a threat. You may go. Seynabou didn't move immediately. Sir, leave. His tone ended the conversation. She turned and walked toward the door. Her legs felt heavy, but she forced herself not to rush, not to show fear. Just before she reached the handle, Mamadou spoke again. Seynabou. She stopped. If you change your mind. She didn't turn around. You know where to find me. She left without answering. The moment the door closed behind her, the world seemed to tilt. Everything had escalated. There was no more pretending, no more uncertainty. Mamadou knew. He had given her a choice, and she had refused. Now she was no longer just a maid who knew too much. She was an obstacle, and obstacles were removed. As Seynabou walked down the corridor, one terrifying truth settled deep inside her chest. She had just chosen to fight a man powerful enough to erase lives without consequence, and Friday was now closer than ever. Seynabou did not realize how fast her life was unraveling until she stepped outside the mansion gates that evening. For the first time since arriving in Nairobi, she was no longer just an employee inside a controlled world. She was exposed, alone, unprotected, and hunted. She walked along the quiet street, lined with tall trees and expensive villas, her mind replaying every word Mamadou had said. I underestimated you. That was no longer a warning. It was a declaration. He had shifted from testing her to dealing with her. She needed allies, immediately. The problem was, who could she trust? The police Mamadou had influence. The staff most were already afraid. Aissatou. She had tried and failed. As Seynabou reached the main road, her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? For a moment there was only silence. Then a calm male voice spoke. You shouldn't be walking alone. Seynabou stopped. Who is this? I've been watching the house. Her grip tightened on the phone. That doesn't answer my question. My name is Kwame Mensah. The name meant nothing to her, yet something about his voice felt grounded, not threatening, not rushed, measured. Why are you calling me? She asked. Because you are about to get yourself killed. A chill ran down her spine. What do you want? I want you to listen carefully. Seynabou glanced around. Cars passed. People walked. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Go to the cafe across the street, Kwame continued. The one with the blue sign. Sit near the window. Order tea. Do not look around too much. How do I know I can trust you? You don't. That answer surprised her. But you also don't have time to be careful. Silence. Then, you were inside Mamadou Ndiaye's office yesterday, he added quietly. Seynabou's breath caught. You heard everything. Her heart began to race again. How do you know that at M? I told you. I've been watching. A long pause followed. Every instinct screamed at her to hang up, but something deeper told her this might be her only chance. Without another word, she crossed the street and entered the cafe. The air smelled of coffee and warm bread. A few customers sat scattered around, absorbed in quiet conversations. Seynabou chose a table near the window, just as instructed. A waiter approached. Tea, please. Her voice sounded calmer than she felt. As soon as the waiter left, the chair across from her moved. A man sat down. He was in his early 40s, dressed simply in a dark shirt and trousers. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were alert, sharp, observant. You shouldn't trust strangers, he said. Seynabou stared at him. Are you Kwame? He nodded. Inspector Kwame Mensah. Her suspicion deepened. Police? Yes. Then why not go to the station? Kwame leaned slightly forward. Because this case is bigger than a simple report. He studied her face. You look exactly like someone who has seen something she cannot unsee. Seynabou said nothing. Kwame continued. Mamadou Ndiaye has been under quiet observation for months. Her heart skipped. For what? Financial irregularities, shell companies, suspicious transfers. Is that enough to arrest him? No. Then what are you waiting for? Proof. The word struck her immediately. The same word Aissatou had used. He's planning to kill his wife, Seynabou said. Kwame didn't react. Yes, he replied calmly. You knew. We suspected. And you did nothing. We couldn't act without evidence strong enough to hold in court. Seynabou felt anger rise inside her. She will be dead before you find your proof. Kwame met her gaze. Unless we act carefully. Carefully, she repeated. There's no time. There is always time if you use it wisely. The waiter returned with her tea. Neither spoke until he left. Then Kwame lowered his voice. You have something. Seynabou hesitated. Don't lie, he added. I wouldn't have called you if I didn't already know. She looked down at her hands, then slowly reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She opened the hidden folder. The photograph of the prescription appeared on the screen. Kwame leaned closer. His expression changed immediately. Where did you get this? He dropped it. Kwame studied the image carefully. His jaw tightened. This is important. It's not enough. No, he agreed. But it's a start. Seynabou exhaled shakily. They plan to do it Friday. I know. At the gala. I know. She looked at him sharply. Then why aren't you stopping it? Because if we move too early, he walks free. And if you move too late, she dies. Kwame didn't respond immediately. Finally, he said, we need him exposed publicly. How? With undeniable evidence. Seynabou leaned forward. What do you need from me? Kwame held her gaze. Access. Her stomach tightened. You want me to go back? Yes. They're already watching me. I know. They threatened my family. I know. Silence. You still want me to go back? I need you to go back. His voice softened slightly. I won't lie to you. It's dangerous. That's not comforting. No, he admitted. But you're already in danger. Seynabou closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, something had changed. Fear was still there, but something stronger had begun to rise beneath it. Resolve. If I help you, you won't be alone. You promise that? Kwame didn't hesitate. Yes. What do you need? Documents, conversations, anything that connects Mamadou to the plan. They're careful. They're not perfect. Seynabou nodded slowly. I can try. That's all I ask. Kwame leaned back slightly, and Seynabou, yes. If things go wrong. She waited. Run. The word hung between them. Heavy. Real. Seynabou swallowed. Understood. Kwame stood up. I'll contact you again. How? You won't see me. Before she could ask another question, he walked away. Just like that. Seynabou sat alone staring at the untouched tea in front of her. Everything had changed again. She was no longer just a maid trying to save her employer. She was now part of something bigger, an investigation, a risk, a fight. As she stood and prepared to return to the mansion, one thought echoed clearly in her mind. This time, she would not fail. But as she stepped back onto the street, she didn't notice the black SUV parked across the road. Inside, a man lowered a camera and dialed a number. Sir, he said calmly. She met someone. A pause. Then Mamadou's voice replied coldly from the other end. Follow her. By the time Seynabou returned to the NDIA estate, the sky had already begun to darken, casting long shadows across the polished driveway and manicured gardens. From a distance, the mansion still looked like a place of beauty and power, a symbol of success admired by many. But now, Seynabou saw it for what it truly was, a carefully controlled prison. As the gates opened and she stepped inside, she felt it immediately, the shift in the air. The guards greeted her as usual, but their eyes lingered longer than before. The cameras seemed more noticeable. The silence inside the house felt heavier. Someone had reported her. She knew it before even reaching the main hallway. Still, she kept her posture steady, her expression calm. If Mamadou suspected she had met someone, she could not show it. She walked past the grand staircase through the marble-floored corridor and into the staff quarters without speaking to anyone. Only once she was alone did she allow herself to breathe. Kwame's words echoed in her mind. You're already in danger. He was right. But now there was no turning back. She had chosen a side. Later that evening, the mansion buzzed with unusual activity. Preparations for the upcoming charity gala had intensified. Decorators arrived with crates of flowers. Caterers moved in and out of the kitchen. Event planners discussed seating arrangements, lighting, and security. From the outside, it was a celebration. Inside, Seynabou knew it was something else entirely. A countdown. She moved through the chaos, quietly observing everything. Every detail mattered now. Every conversation could be a clue. While arranging table settings in the dining hall, she overheard two senior staff members speaking in hushed tones. Guest list confirmed. Yes, government officials, investors, media. And Madam, she'll attend. Mr. Mamadou insisted. Of course he did. Their voices dropped lower. This is bigger than a gala. I know. Seynabou pretended not to hear, but her pulse quickened. The scale of Mamadou's plan was becoming clearer. This was not just about killing Aissatou. It was about doing it publicly, convincingly, with witnesses, with influence, with control over the narrative. Later, while delivering fresh linens to the West Wing, Seynabou noticed Bakari Diop standing alone near the office corridor. He looked restless, pacing slowly, checking his watch. When he saw her, he hesitated, then motioned subtly for her to come closer. "We shouldn't talk here," he whispered. "Then don't talk," she replied quietly. "Listen," Bakari frowned. "You suspect something is wrong." His eyes sharpened. "I didn't say that." "You don't need to." A pause. "You're afraid," Seynabou continued, "but not for yourself." Bakari studied her carefully. "Who are you really?" "Someone trying to stop a disaster." Silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, "What do you know?" he asked. Seynabou glanced down the corridor. Empty. "Friday," she said. Bakari stiffened. "You know about the board transfer?" Her heart skipped. "Explain." He lowered his voice. "Mamadou scheduled an emergency board meeting right after the gala." "For what?" "To finalize a complete ownership shift. Without Madame. With her signature." Seynabou's stomach twisted. She didn't sign anything." "I know." "Then how?" "I've seen the documents." "Are they real?" "They look real. But they're not." Bakari exhaled slowly. "Forgery at this level is almost impossible to prove, unless you catch it in the act." The pieces clicked together. "He needs her dead first," Seynabou whispered. Bakari didn't respond. He didn't need to. Both of them understood. Seynabou leaned closer. "Listen to me." "What? You're in danger too." "I've handled worse. Not this." Bakari hesitated, then asked quietly, "What are you planning?" "I have someone helping me." "Who?" "I can't say." "Then why trust me?" "Because you're already involved." Another silence. Then Bakari nodded hand once. "What do you need?" Relief washed through her, but only briefly. "Access to financial records." "That's risky." "So is dying." He almost smiled. "I'll see what I can do." Before they could say more, footsteps echoed nearby. They separated immediately. Moments later, Mamadou appeared at the end of the corridor. His gaze moved from Bakari to Seynabou and lingered. Too long, too carefully. "Working late?" he asked smoothly. "Yes, sir," Seynabou replied. "Preparation never ends," Bakari added. Mamadou smiled. "Indeed." He walked past them, but not before giving Seynabou one last glance. It was subtle, but unmistakable. He knew something, not everything, but enough. That night, Seynabou did not return to her room immediately. Instead, she waited until the house quieted, until most staff had gone to sleep, until the last lights dimmed. Then she moved. Carefully, silently. She made her way toward Mamadou's private office. Every step felt dangerous. Every shadow seemed alive. If she was caught here, there would be no second chances. She reached the door. Locked. She expected that. From her pocket, she pulled a small object. A keycard, taken earlier from a distracted junior staff member. She hesitated only a moment before sliding it through the reader. A soft beep. The lock clicked. Her heart pounded. She opened the door just enough to slip inside. The office was dark. She closed the door quietly behind her. For a moment, she stood still listening. Nothing. Then she moved toward the desk. Drawers, files, locked cabinets, everything organized, everything controlled. She worked quickly, searching for anything that could connect Mamadou to the plan. Minutes passed. Then a folder, hidden beneath a stack of documents. She opened it. Inside were printed emails, financial transfers, medical reports, and one document that made her breath catch. Revised medical summary. Aissatou Ndiaye. Her hands trembled as she read. Symptoms exaggerated. Conditions fabricated. Details altered. A complete narrative designed to support a natural death. This was it. Proof. Real proof. She reached for her phone. Footsteps. Outside the door. Her heart stopped. Voices. Mamadou and someone else. "Everything is ready," Mamadou was saying. "We proceed as planned." The door handle moved. Seynabou's blood ran cold. She looked around desperately. No time. No escape. The lock clicked, and the door began to open. The door opened. Seynabou did not think she reacted. In a split second, she slid the folder back into place, stepped away from the desk, and moved toward the tall curtain beside the window. The fabric was heavy, thick enough to conceal her completely if she stayed perfectly still. She slipped behind it just as the lights flicked on. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. Through a narrow gap in the fabric, she could see Mamadou enter the office, followed by Dr. Cheik Fei and another man she recognized immediately. Bakary. Seynabou's breath nearly stopped. Why was Bakary here with them? She pressed herself tighter against the wall, forcing her body not to move. If Bakary had betrayed her, then everything was over. Mamadou walked calmly to his desk and placed a set of documents down. "Close the door," he said. Bakary obeyed. The soft click of the lock echoed through the room. "We don't have much time," Mamadou continued. "Tomorrow must go perfectly." Dr. Fei nodded, adjusting his glasses nervously. "The dosage has been prepared." Bakary remained silent. Mamadou turned toward him. "You reviewed the transfer documents." "Yes, and they will pass inspection." "That's not what I asked." Bakary hesitated. "They are convincing." "Convincing," Mamadou repeated. "Not perfect. No document is perfect." A faint smile touched Mamadou's lips. "That's why timing matters." He leaned forward slightly. "Once Asatou collapses, everything moves quickly. Grief does not leave room for detailed scrutiny." Dr. Fei shifted uncomfortably. "And the symptoms?" Mamadou asked. "Consistent with cardiac failure," the doctor replied. "Especially with her medical history." "Good." Seynabou's hands clenched tightly behind the curtain. They were speaking about it so casually, so confidently, as if her life meant nothing, as if her death were inevitable. Mamadou picked up another document. "The board meeting is scheduled for 1 hour after the announcement." Bakary finally spoke. "That's very soon." "Exactly. There won't be time for questions." "That's the idea." Silence followed. Then Bakary said quietly, "And if someone asks anyway," Mamadou's gaze sharpened, "then you will answer." Bakary didn't respond immediately. From her hiding place, Seynabou watched him closely. His shoulders were tense, his eyes lowered. He was not comfortable. Good. That meant he hadn't betrayed her. Not yet. Mamadou stepped closer to him. "You've been with this company a long time." "Yes." "You understand how important stability is." "Yes." "And you understand what happens when instability threatens everything we've built." Bakary met his gaze. "Yes." "Then we are in agreement." A pause. Then slowly, "Yes." The word felt heavy, reluctant, but spoken. Seynabou's chest tightened. Bakary wasn't on Mamadou's side, but he was trapped, just like everyone else. Dr. Fei cleared his throat. "What about the maid?" Seynabou's pulse spiked. Mamadou didn't look surprised. "She's been dealt with. She's still here. For now." "That concerns me." Mamadou's expression hardened slightly. "It shouldn't. She's been asking questions. Not anymore. And if she speaks..." Mamadou's voice dropped. "She won't." The certainty in his tone sent a chill through Seynabou's entire body. Bakary shifted again. Perhaps it would be safer to remove her now. Seynabou's breath caught. Mamadou turned slowly. "No. Why wait?" "Because fear is more useful than disappearance." Silence. Then, after tomorrow, Mamadou continued, it won't matter what she says. Seynabou understood immediately. Once Aïssatou was dead, once the documents were signed, once Mamadou had control, the truth would no longer matter. Dr. Fay nodded uneasily. And if something goes wrong, Mamadou smiled faintly. It won't. He turned back toward the desk. Gentlemen, we are very close to the end. The word end echoed in Seynabou's mind, but not in the way Mamadou meant. This was not the end. It was the moment everything had to change. She slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Carefully, silently, she angled it through the narrow gap in the curtain. The camera opened. Her hands trembled, but she steadied them. Click. One photo. Click. Another. Documents. Faces. Proof. Real proof. If she could get out of this room, if she could get this to Kwame, then everything might finally shift. Mamadou's voice continued. Tomorrow night, everything we've worked for becomes reality. Seynabou kept recording, every word, every detail. Dr. Fay nodded. Bakari said nothing. Minutes passed. Then Mamadou closed the folder. That will be all. The meeting was ending. Panic rose in Seynabou's chest. If they left, she could escape. If they stayed, she was trapped. Dr. Fay moved toward the door. Bakari followed. Mamadou remained at the desk for a moment longer. Then, he paused. Something had caught his attention. His eyes shifted slowly toward the curtain. Seynabou froze. Her heart stopped. He stepped closer. One step, then another. Her entire body went still. Don't move. Don't breathe. Don't think. Mamadou stopped just inches away from the fabric. Silence filled the room. Then a phone rang. Not hers. His. He glanced at the screen. Annoyed. Answered. Yes. A voice spoke urgently from the other end. Seynabou couldn't hear the words, but she saw the change in his expression. Irritation. Then focus. I'll handle it, he said. He turned away, just like that. The moment passed. He walked out of the office. The door closed behind him. Seynabou remained frozen for several seconds. Then, she moved. Quickly. Silently. Out from behind the curtain, across the room, to the door. She opened it just enough to slip into the hallway. Empty. She didn't stop, didn't look back, didn't breathe. She walked calmly until she reached the corner. Then she ran. Not loudly, not recklessly, but with urgency she could no longer suppress. She reached the service stairs and descended rapidly. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She opened Kwame's number, sent the photos, then typed a single message, I have proof. Tomorrow night. It's happening. She hit send, and for the first time since entering the mansion, hope returned. But as she reached the bottom of the stairs, she didn't notice the small camera mounted above the exit door. And inside Mamadou's office, his phone buzzed again. A new notification from a private security app. Motion detected. Restricted area. Mamadou's expression darkened. Slowly. Dangerously. She's still here, he murmured, and this time he would not underestimate her again. The message had been sent. There was no taking it back. Seynabou stood at the bottom of the service stairs, her chest rising and falling as she struggled to steady her breathing. Her fingers still trembled from the rush of adrenaline, from the fear of being discovered, from the fragile hope that she had finally done something that mattered. I have proof. Tomorrow night. It's happening. The words replayed in her mind. Now it was in Kwame's hands. Now everything depended on whether that proof would be enough. But deep down, Seynabou knew something else. Mamadou would not wait. He would act, immediately. The feeling came like a warning inside her bones. And she was right. Upstairs inside his office, Mamadou stared at the alert on his phone for a long moment. Motion detected. Restricted area. His eyes narrowed. He didn't need to guess. He already knew. Seynabou, he whispered, not with anger, with certainty. He turned toward the security monitor mounted on the wall. With a few precise taps, he accessed the camera feed. The screen flickered, then showed exactly what he expected. A blurred figure slipping out of the office. A woman. A maid. A witness. His lips curved slightly. So? You've chosen your path. He picked up his phone and dialed. Find her, he said, calmly. Now. Back downstairs, Seynabou forced herself to walk normally as she re-entered the staff corridor. Running would draw attention. Fear would expose her. She needed to blend in. Disappear. For a few more hours, that was all. Just enough time. But as she passed the kitchen entrance, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. 2 security guards. Not their usual positions. Not their usual routine. They were speaking quietly, scanning the corridor with sharp, focused eyes. Searching. For her. Seynabou lowered her gaze and continued walking. Don't stop. Don't react. Don't run! She turned into the laundry room, closed the door behind her, and leaned against it. Her heart pounded violently. They knew. Of course they knew. The cameras. The alert. Mamadou had already seen it. She had minutes, maybe less. Her phone vibrated. A reply. Kwame. Received. Stay where you are. Do not leave the house. We are moving. Seynabou stared at the message. Stay inside this place. With guards already searching, her instinct screamed the opposite. Run. Escape. Hide. But she forced herself to think. Kwame needed her here. If she disappeared now, Mamadou would destroy everything. Evidence, narrative, truth. No. She had come too far. She wouldn't run. Not yet. A sudden knock slammed against the laundry door. Seynabou. Her blood froze. The voice belonged to one of the guards. Open the door. She didn't move. Now. Seynabou swallowed hard, then slowly opened it. The guard stood there, expression tight. Mr. Mamadou wants to see you, again. But this time, there was no politeness, no softness, only command. I'm working, she said carefully. You're done working. The second guard stepped forward. Come with us. Seynabou's mind raced. This was it. If she followed them, she might never walk out again. She needed time, just a little more time. My phone, she said suddenly. I left it in my room. The guards exchanged a glance. One nodded. Get it. They followed her. Of course they did. Seynabou walked slowly down the corridor, every step heavy with calculation. Think. 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 They reached her room. She opened the door, stepped inside. The guards remained just outside, watching, waiting. She picked up her phone, then turned. I'm ready. They escorted her back through the hallway, but instead of heading toward Mamadou's office, they turned toward the back exit. Seynabou's chest tightened. This isn't his office. Keep walking. Where are we going? No answer. The door ahead opened. Night air rushed in. Cold. Sharp. A black SUV waited outside. Engine running, doors open. Seynabou stopped. I'm not getting in. One guard stepped closer. You don't have a choice. Her heart slammed against her ribs. This was not a conversation. This was removal. Permanent. No, she said, stepping back. The second guard grabbed her arm. Hard. Move. Seynabou reacted instantly. She twisted, pulling free, with a force she didn't know she had. Then she ran. Not thinking, not planning, just running. Behind her, shouting erupted. Stop her! Footsteps thundered across the pavement. Seynabou sprinted through the garden path, past trimmed hedges and decorative lights, her breath burning her legs, screaming. She reached the side gate. Locked. Of course it was locked. She turned. The guards were gaining. Too close. Too fast. Her eyes scanned wildly, then saw it. A narrow gap in the fence near the storage shed. Barely visible. Barely possible. She ran toward it, dropped to the ground. Squeezed through metal, tore against her skin. Pain shot through her arm, but she didn't stop. She rolled onto the other side and kept running. Out. Into the dark street beyond. Behind her, the guards reached the fence. Too late. Seynabou didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs trembled, until the mansion disappeared behind trees and distance. Finally, she slowed, collapsed against a wall, her entire body shaking, alive. She was still alive, but everything had changed. She was no longer inside, no longer hidden, no longer safe. Her phone buzzed again. Kwame, where are you? Her fingers trembled as she typed, "They tried to take me. I escaped." A pause. Then, "Stay where you are. I'm coming." Seynabou slid down against the wall, pulling her knees close to her chest. Tears finally came. Not from weakness, from everything she had been holding back. Fear, exhaustion, relief. She wiped her face quickly. Tomorrow was Friday, the final day. And now there was no going back, no hiding, no second chances. Only one path remained. Fight or lose everything. The city felt different at night. Nairobi's streets, once filled with movement and noise, now carried a strange stillness, like something was waiting beneath the surface, unseen but present. Seynabou sat in the back seat of Kwame's unmarked car, her hands clasped tightly together, her body still trembling from the escape. She hadn't realized how close she had come. Not until she was out. Not until the mansion disappeared behind her. Kwame drove in silence for several minutes, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The glow of passing streetlights moved across his face in slow intervals, revealing tension he wasn't trying to hide. "You were supposed to stay inside," he said finally. Seynabou let out a shaky breath. "They were taking me somewhere. I know. They weren't bringing me to him. I know." She turned toward him. "Then why did you tell me to stay?" Kwame's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Because we needed you there. And now we adapt." That word settled heavily between them. Adapt. Because the plan had already broken. Because Mamadou had moved faster than expected. Because Seynabou was no longer a hidden witness. She was exposed. And hunted. Kwame turned into a quiet residential street lined with small apartment buildings. He parked beneath a flickering street lamp and turned off the engine. "This is a safe place," he said. "For now." Seynabou nodded slowly. Her body felt exhausted, but her mind refused to rest. "What happens next?" she asked. Kwame leaned back in his seat. "Tomorrow is still the key. The gala. Yes, he's going to do it there." "I know. With all those people around, that's exactly why." Seynabou frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It does," Kwame replied calmly. "Public deaths are easier to control than private ones. How witnesses see what they're told to see." He glanced at her. "And Mamadou is very good at controlling what people believe." Seynabou thought about the guests. Government officials, investors, media, all gathered in one place. If Aissatou collapsed, if a doctor confirmed heart failure, if Mamadou acted like a grieving husband, no one would question it. Not immediately. Maybe not ever. "Unless we expose him there," she said quietly. Kwame nodded. "That's the only way this works. And if we fail," Kwame didn't answer. He didn't need to. Seynabou looked down at her hands. "So what's the plan?" Kwame reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folder. Inside were printed copies of the photos she had sent him, medical reports, forged summaries, transaction records. "This is strong," he said. "But not enough. Not enough," she repeated. "We need a direct link." "Like what?" "Something that connects Mamadou personally to the act." Seynabou thought back. The office, the conversation, the documents. "He talks about it openly," she said. "Not where it matters." Kwame met her gaze. "We need him to say it in a way no one can deny." A long silence followed. Then, "You want him to confess?" "Yes." Seynabou let out a soft, incredulous laugh. "He's not going to confess in front of a room full of people." "No," Kwame agreed. "He's not." "Then, how we make him think he has already won?" The idea hung in the air, dangerous, brilliant, terrifying. Seynabou slowly understood. If he believes everything is secure, he becomes careless, and we catch him. Kwame nodded. "Exactly." Seynabou leaned back, her mind racing. "How do we get close enough?" "You don't." She looked at him sharply. "What?" "You're not going back inside." "Yes, I am." "No, I have to." Kwame shook his head. "You're already compromised, and you think that matters now? It matters because they'll be watching for you." "Good." Kwame frowned. "That's not a good thing." "It is," Seynabou insisted. "If they're watching me, they're not watching you." Silence. Kwame studied her carefully. "You're asking to be bait. I'm asking to finish what I started. You could get killed." "I almost did." "That's not the same." "No," she said firmly. "It's worse." Kwame didn't respond immediately. The tension between them thickened. "Finally, you don't have to do this," he said. Seynabou met his gaze. "Yes, I do." Why the question surprised her. For a moment she didn't answer. Then, "Because she trusted him," she said quietly. "And no one deserves to die because they trusted the wrong person." Kwame looked away briefly, then back. "All right." The word came slowly, reluctantly. "But we do this my way." Seynabou nodded. "Tell me." Kwame pulled out a small device, no bigger than a coin. "This is a recorder." Seynabou took it carefully. "It transmits in real time. To you, to my team. So, if he says anything, we hear it." Her grip tightened around the device. "This is it." "Yes." "But there's one problem," Kwame added. "What you need to get close enough." Seynabou thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I know how." The next evening arrived faster than either of them expected. The NDIA mansion was transformed. Lights shimmered across the gardens. Music drifted through the air. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Guests in elegant attire stepped onto the red-carpeted walkway, greeted by cameras and polite applause. Inside, everything sparkled. Perfect. Controlled. Exactly as Mamadou intended. But beneath the beauty, a trap was waiting. Seynabou stood across the street, dressed simply blending into the shadows. Her heart pounded, the recorder hidden beneath her clothing. Kwame's voice echoed in her mind. "Once you're inside, don't hesitate." She took a deep breath, then stepped forward, back toward the place that had almost destroyed her, back toward the man who wanted her gone, back toward the night that would decide everything. As she approached the gate, one thought burned clearly in her mind. This time she wouldn't run. The night of the gala shimmered with perfection. From a distance, the NDIA estate looked like a dream. Golden lights draped across trees, music floating gently through the warm Nairobi air, and the soft hum of voices from the most powerful people in the city. Luxury cars lined the road, security moved with disciplined precision, and cameras flashed at the entrance as guests stepped out in elegant gowns and tailored suits. To everyone outside, this was a celebration. To Seynabou, it was a battlefield. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her breathing slow, controlled, her eyes fixed on the gate ahead. Every instinct inside her warned her to turn back. But she didn't. She couldn't. Because somewhere inside that glowing mansion, a woman was walking toward her own death, trusting the very man who had planned it. Seynabou adjusted her scarf slightly, making sure the small recording device remained hidden beneath the fabric near her collarbone. It pressed lightly against her skin, a constant reminder of the risk she had accepted. Kwame's final words echoed in her mind. "Get him to speak. That's all that matters." She stepped forward. The guards at the entrance scanned each arriving guest carefully. Seynabou kept her head down as she approached, walking behind a group of catering staff carrying trays of drinks. Their uniforms matched the event service crew, and for a moment she moved with them, blending into their rhythm. "Staff entrance is at the back," one guard called out sharply. Seynabou didn't stop. She kept walking. One of the caterers glanced at her confused but said nothing. They passed through the gate, and just like that, she was inside. Her heart pounded violently, but her face remained calm. The garden was alive with laughter and conversation. Tables were arranged beneath glowing lanterns decorated with flowers and fine glassware. A live band played soft jazz in the corner, adding elegance to the evening. Seynabou moved carefully along the edge of the gathering, her eyes scanning the crowd. Politicians, business executives, media personalities, all here to celebrate Aïssatou Ndiaye, all completely unaware they were standing inside a carefully orchestrated crime scene. Then she saw her. Aïssatou. Dressed in a flowing gold gown, she stood near the center of the garden, greeting guests with her usual grace. Her smile was warm, her posture strong, but Seynabou noticed the small details others missed. The slight delay before she responded to someone speaking. The way her fingers pressed briefly against her temple. The faint shadow of exhaustion behind her eyes. She was already weakening, and standing beside her Mamadou. Perfect. Composed. Smiling. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back, guiding her movements, controlling the pace of every interaction. From the outside, he looked like a devoted husband. From where Seynabou stood, he looked like a man counting down the final minutes. She moved closer, weaving through the crowd, careful not to draw attention. Every step mattered now, every second. As she approached the main gathering area, a voice stopped her. "You shouldn't be here." Seynabou turned. Bakary. He stood just behind her, his expression tense. "You escaped," he whispered. "Yes. They're looking for you." "I know." His eyes flicked around nervously. "You need to leave. I can't. They'll kill you. Not before I finish this." Bakary shook his head. "You don't understand how dangerous I do." She met his gaze. "Better than you think." A long pause. Then, "What are you planning?" he asked quietly. Seynabou leaned closer. "Help me." Bakary hesitated, then nodded once. "Tell me what to do." Relief washed through her. "I need to get close to him. That's impossible." "No." She glanced toward the main stage area. "He'll make a speech." Bakary followed her gaze. "Yes, that's when." He frowned. "Too many people." "Exactly. That makes it harder. That makes it public." Bakary understood. And if something goes wrong, Seynabou didn't hesitate. "It won't." Before he could respond, a voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen." The crowd began to quiet. Mamadou stepped forward onto the small stage. The lights shifted, focusing on him. Aïssatou stood beside him, smiling. The perfect image. Seynabou's heart pounded. This was it. Tonight, Mamadou began smoothly. "We celebrate not only success, but compassion." The audience applauded. Seynabou moved, slowly, carefully, through the edges of the crowd, closing the distance. "Years ago," Mamadou continued, "my wife began a journey that changed thousands of lives." More applause. Closer now, just a few meters away. Her fingers brushed lightly against the hidden recorder. Still active, still transmitting. Her strength, her vision, her dedication. Closer. Guests shifted around her. No one noticed, no one saw. Have inspired all of us. Now, she was close enough to hear his voice without the speakers. Close enough to act. Mamadou turned toward Aisato, smiling warmly. And tonight, his voice softened. We honor her. He reached for a glass on the podium. Seynabou's breath caught. This was the moment. She moved forward. Sir. The word cut through the air. Not loud, but enough. Mamadou paused. His eyes found her instantly. Recognition. Shock. Then, something darker. How did you get in here? He asked quietly. The microphone picked up every word. The crowd stirred slightly. Seynabou stepped closer. I came to tell the truth. A murmur spread through the guests. Aisatou looked confused. Seynabou, she said softly. Mamadou's smile returned, but it was forced now. This is not the time. It's the only time, Seynabou replied. Her voice was steady, clear, carrying further than she expected. You've been poisoning her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aisatou stepped back. What? Mamadou's eyes darkened. Enough. He reached for Seynabou's arm. She pulled away. You planned this, she continued. Tonight. Security. Mamadou said sharply. No one moved. Too many people. Too much attention. Too many eyes watching. You altered her medication, Seynabou said. You forged documents. You planned her death. The crowd erupted into whispers. Phones began to rise, recording. Mamadou's calm began to crack. You have no idea what you're talking about. I heard you, she said. In your office. Silence. Just for a second. But enough. Then Mamadou laughed. Soft. Controlled. Do you really think anyone will believe a maid? The words hung in the air. Exactly what Kwame needed. Exactly what they had planned. Seynabou held his gaze. They will. Why? Because you just admitted it. The shift was subtle, but real. Mamadou realized it. Too late. The crowd was no longer whispering. They were watching, listening, recording. Every word, every reaction. Aisatou's face had gone pale. Mamadou, she whispered. But he didn't look at her. His focus remained locked on Seynabou. You should have taken the money, he said quietly. The microphone caught it. Clear. Undeniable. A collective gasp spread through the crowd, and in that moment, the perfect mask finally cracked. For a single suspended moment, time seemed to stop. The music had faded into silence. The soft hum of conversation had vanished. Even the warm night air felt still, as though the entire world was holding its breath. Every eye in the garden was fixed on the stage, on Mamadou, on Seynabou, on Aisatou. And in that fragile space between truth and denial, everything hung in the balance. Mamadou did not panic, not immediately. Men like him never did. Instead, he smiled. Slowly, carefully, as though the moment could still be controlled. You've been very imaginative, he said, his voice returning to its smooth public tone. But this is neither the place nor the time for such accusations. A few guests shifted uneasily. Some nodded. Doubt, confusion, the seed of uncertainty. He was trying to reclaim the narrative, and for a second it almost worked. Then Seynabou spoke again. You told them. Friday night, she said, her voice steady, cutting cleanly through the silence. After dinner she would collapse. Mamadou's eyes flickered, just for a fraction of a second. But it was enough. I don't know what you think you heard, he replied calmly, but you're mistaken. I heard everything, Seynabou continued. You, Dr. Fay, and the others. The dosage, the forged medical records. The board meeting after her death. Gasps rippled through the crowd again, now louder, now undeniable. All eyes turned toward Dr. Cheek Fei, who stood near the edge of the stage, his face pale, his composure beginning to fracture. "This is ridiculous," Mamadou said sharply. But his voice had changed. The smooth confidence was cracking. "Security," he called again. Still, no one moved, because now too many people were watching. Too many phones were raised. Too many witnesses. Aissatou took a slow step backward. Her gaze moved between Seynabou and Mamadou, confusion turning into something far more dangerous. "Understanding. Mamadou," she said, her voice trembling. "Is this true?" He turned to her immediately. "No," he said, softer now, more personal. "Of course not." But Seynabou stepped forward. "Ask him about the prescription," she said. "Ask him why your dosage was increased. Ask him why your symptoms suddenly appeared." Aissatou's breathing quickened. She looked at her husband, then at the glass still sitting on the podium, then back at him. "Mamadou," she whispered, "tell me." For the first time that night, he hesitated. Just a moment. Just enough. And in that hesitation, the truth became visible. The crowd saw it. Aissatou saw it. Seynabou saw it. Mamadou's expression hardened. The mask was gone now. No more charm. No more performance. Only calculation. "You shouldn't have come back," he said quietly to Seynabou. The microphone picked it up. Clear, sharp, irrefutable. A wave of murmurs swept through the audience. Phones moved closer, recording every second. Aissatou's hand trembled. You were going to kill me?" she asked. The words sounded unreal, like something from another world. Mamadou didn't answer her. He kept his eyes on Seynabou. "You've made a mistake," he said. Seynabou didn't move. "No," she replied. "You did." And then everything happened at once. Mamadou moved. Fast, faster than anyone expected. His hand shot toward the glass on the podium. Seynabou saw it immediately. "No!" she shouted. She lunged forward, but Mamadou was already moving toward Aissatou. "Drink," he said sharply. "Don't make a scene." Aissatou froze. Confusion. Fear. Shock. Her entire world collapsing in front of her. Mamadou's hand tightened around the glass. "Drink," he repeated. This time there was no kindness in his voice. Only command. Only control. The crowd gasped. Someone shouted, but no one moved fast enough, except Seynabou. She pushed through the final distance, her heart pounding, her body moving on pure instinct. "Stop." She reached them, just as Mamadou forced the glass toward Aissatou's lips. Seynabou grabbed his wrist. Hard. The glass tilted. Liquid spilled. Aissatou stumbled back. The glass shattered on the floor. Time exploded. Guests screamed. Security rushed forward. Phones dropped. People stepped back. Chaos. Pure chaos. Mamadou turned towards Seynabou, his face no longer controlled, no longer calm. Fury. Raw. Unfiltered. "You ruined everything," he said. His voice was low, dangerous. Then he shoved her. Hard. Seynabou fell to the ground, pain shooting through her shoulder. But she didn't stay down. She couldn't. She pushed herself back up, just as security reached the stage. But they weren't moving toward her. They were moving toward Mamadou. Because now everything was clear. Inspector Kwame Mensah stepped forward, through the crowd, his badge raised. "Stand down," he shouted. The authority in his voice cut through the chaos instantly. "Mamadou Ndiaye, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and attempted homicide." Silence fell again. Heavy. Final. Mamadou stared at him, then laughed, softly. "You think this ends here?" Kwame didn't respond. "Everything you've built is collapsing," he said calmly. Mamadou's gaze shifted to the crowd, to the cameras, to Aissatou. She stood frozen, tears in her eyes, her entire reality shattered in seconds. He looked back at Seynabou. For a moment, something unreadable passed through his expression. Then it was gone. "I underestimated you," he said again. But this time, there was no control left, only defeat. Kwame stepped forward. Cuffs clicked. Cold. Final. Mamadou didn't resist. Because for the first time he had lost control of the story. Dr. Faye was taken next. Then the others. One by one. The perfect plan collapsed in front of everyone. And in the center of it all, Seynabou stood, breathing hard, shaking, alive. Aissatou slowly turned toward her. Their eyes met. No words, just understanding, just truth, just the realization that one woman had risked everything and changed everything. The night that was meant to end in silence had become a moment the entire country would never forget. The night that nearly ended a life became the night that changed many. By sunrise, the story had already spread beyond the walls of the Ndiaye estate. Videos from the gala flooded social media. Headlines exploded across news platforms. A respected billionaire husband exposed as the architect of his wife's murder. A quiet maid revealed as the woman who stopped it. But inside the mansion there was no celebration. Only silence. A deep, heavy silence that followed shock. Aissatou Ndiaye sat in the same sunroom where Seynabou had once tried to warn her. The morning light streamed through the glass, casting long shadows across the floor. The same room that had once felt calm and elegant now felt unfamiliar, like a place she no longer recognized. Everything she thought she knew had been a lie. Her hands rested on the table, unmoving. Across from her sat Seynabou, not as a maid, not as an employee, but as the only person who had told her the truth when no one else did. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Aissatou broke the silence. "I remember every word you said." Her voice was quiet, heavy. "I remember how certain you were." Seynabou lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry you had to hear it from me like that." Aissatou shook her head slowly. "No." A pause. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you." The weight of those words settled between them. Seynabou looked up. "You had no reason to. I had every reason." Aissatou's voice trembled slightly. "I just didn't want to see it." Silence returned, but this time it felt different. Not cold, not distant, something softer, something real. Aissatou leaned back slightly, her eyes distant. "I built my life believing that intelligence protects you." She gave a faint, bitter smile. "I was wrong." Seynabou said nothing. "There are people," Aissatou continued, "who don't need to be smarter than you. They only need you to trust them." Her eyes met Seynabou's again. "And I trusted him." The truth hung in the air, unavoidable, unchangeable, but not the end. After a moment, Aissatou exhaled slowly. "He controlled everything," she said. "The company, my schedule, even my health." Seynabou nodded. "He made you doubt yourself." Aissatou looked down at her hands. "I thought I was getting sick." "You weren't." "I thought I was losing my mind." "You weren't." "I thought I needed him." Seynabou hesitated, then said gently, "You didn't." Aissatou closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again, stronger this time. "Now I have to rebuild everything." Seynabou studied her. "You will." Aissatou smiled faintly. "You sound very certain. I've seen what you built before." A pause. And this time Seynabou added, "You'll build it without someone trying to take it from you." That made Aissatou laugh softly, for the first time since the night before, not out of joy, but out of release. The beginning of healing. Outside the mansion, things were already changing. Authorities had sealed Mamadou's office. Investigators moved through the property collecting evidence. Financial records were being reviewed, bank accounts frozen, statements taken. Inspector Kwame Mensah stood near the entrance, speaking with a team of officers. His posture remained calm, but his eyes reflected the weight of what had happened. When Seynabou stepped outside later that morning, he turned toward her. "You did it," he said. She shook her head. "We did it." Kwame allowed himself a small smile. Most people wouldn't have stayed. Most people didn't know. He studied her for a moment. Even knowing, they still wouldn't have stayed. Seynabou looked back toward the house. "I didn't stay because I was brave." "Then why?" "Because leaving would have been worse." Kwame nodded. He understood. "Your family is safe," he added. Relief flooded her instantly. "They were never in danger," he continued. "That threat was meant to control you." Seynabou exhaled slowly. "I thought so, but you couldn't take that risk." "No." Kwame's expression softened slightly. "You made the right choice." For a moment, neither spoke. Then, Seynabou asked quietly, "What happens now?" Kwame looked toward the estate. "Now, justice begins." The following weeks were not easy. The truth never is. Mamadou Ndiaye's trial became one of the most widely followed cases in the country. Evidence surfaced piece by piece: financial fraud, forged documents, medical manipulation conspiracy. Everything he had built on deception collapsed under scrutiny. Dr. Cheik Faye confessed. Bakary Diop testified. And Seynabou told the truth, not as a servant, but as a witness. Aissatou attended the trial quietly, sitting in the front row, listening to every detail of the man she had once trusted more than anyone. She did not cry. She did not speak. She simply watched. And when the verdict finally came guilty, on all counts, there was no celebration, only closure. Weeks later, the NDIA estate looked different, not in appearance, but in feeling. The silence had changed. It was no longer heavy, no longer filled with fear. It was peaceful. Seynabou stood in the garden, watching workers remove old decorations and restore the space to something simpler. Aissatou joined her. "I've been thinking," she said. Seynabou turned. "About what?" "About what comes next." She looked out across the garden. "This house, this company, everything I built." She paused. "I don't want to just rebuild it." Seynabou listened carefully. "I want to change it." "How?" Aissatou turned toward her. "There are thousands of women like you." Seynabou frowned slightly. "Like me, strong, invisible, overlooked." A pause, and unprotected. The words carried weight, real weight. "I want to create something for them," Aissatou continued. "A foundation, legal protection, education, opportunity." Seynabou felt something shift inside her. "You mean, for domestic workers, for anyone who has ever been treated like they don't matter?" Silence. "Then, will you help me?" Aissatou asked. Seynabou blinked. "Me, yes, I'm just—" "No," Aissatou interrupted gently. "You're not just anything." She stepped closer. "You're the reason I'm still alive." Seynabou didn't know what to say, so she said the only thing that felt true. "Yes." And just like that, a new beginning started. Not from power, not from wealth, but from courage, from truth. From a woman who refused to stay silent, and another who finally learned to listen. Life does not always warn us when danger is close. Sometimes it hides behind familiar faces, kind words, and the comfort of trust. The hardest truth to accept is that not everyone who stands beside us wishes us well, and not every threat comes from strangers. But this story reminds us of something even more powerful. Courage does not belong only to the rich, the strong, or the influential. Sometimes it lives in the quietest people, the ones no one notices, the ones the world overlooks. People like Seynabou. She had no power, no status, no protection. Only a choice. Stay silent and survive. Or speak and risk everything. And because she chose truth over fear, a life was saved. Justice was served. And something broken was given a chance to heal. If this story moved, you take a moment to reflect. What would you have done in her place? Would you have stayed silent? Or found the strength to speak? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is in your country. And if you believe in stories that inspire courage, justice, and hope, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes one voice is enough to change everything.